hours.
The news from Guyana, the region, and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Laboratories. With the news at this time, I'm Dennis Chabrol. Good morning. First, the highlights. The opposition may go to court for government spending from the contingency fund. Chief Elections Officer Vishnu Prasad says local government elections can be held next year. The man wanted in connection with the stabbing death of an East Coast Demerara bus conductor has surrendered. Regionally, more than 100 passengers aboard a Caribbean Airlines flight had been delayed for 30 hours after a passenger died. And we'll bring you the latest from the BBC World Service on the international scene. The details coming up.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now the news in detail. Opposition leader Joseph Harman says his Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change APNU-AFC is considering taking the government to court for spending monies from the Treasury illegally. He says, based on a number of financial papers tabled at the National Assembly for consideration on Thursday, the government has spent billions of dollars for reasons that are not unforeseen, not urgent, and not an emergency. These include direct cash grants to flood-affected farmers and retrenched sugar workers.
Only yesterday we had a full debate, a full discussion on this matter, and that the attorneys that are on the team itself, they are basically looking at what actions can be taken and to provide us with an opinion. But it's in their opinion that there is a clear possibility that that action can be taken once the exercise of this discretion is tainted by improper purpose.
Opposition leader Joseph Harman. The European Union (EU) sees the need for closer political relations with oil-rich Guyana. Deputy Managing Director for America's European External Action Service, Mr. Javier Nino Perez, was speaking at a joint news conference with President Irfan Ali.
We want to be able to talk to Guyana about absolutely everything that is of mutual interest and concern. Whether this is the regional situation, whether it's a specific foreign policy issue, where is this how to work together in the multilateral forum, where is it how to fight together to promote our societal model. This is a real challenge for the next few years. How to make sure that we're in a place after those 7 years where we can say to each other, this is how partners, this is how friends talk to each other about everything that is of mutual interest of concern. And I think this is the challenge we have to give to one another.
President Ali hints that future relations between Guyana and the European Union will focus on a range of matters related to the Caribbean.
It is not only about budget support and future programming of resources. It is much more than that now. The new dimension of the relationship is much, much more than that. Deal from governance and you notice Mr. Perez is not shy away from mentioning that what we are creating is a political partnership. And that's important for us to understand, because a political partnership, that is not language you hear from international organizations very often. But there is tremendous strength when an organization say we are looking to build political partnership.
President Irfan Ali. For several decades, the European Union has been funding a variety of infrastructural projects and the sugar industry. Chief Elections Officer of the Guyana Elections Commission, Vishnu Prasad, says that local government elections can be held next year. Elections for neighborhood and town councils across Guyana should have been held this year, but Mr. Prasad says those elections can be held in 2022.
1 year's time is more than enough to prepare for and hold local government elections.
The prolonged delay in removing Keith Lowenfield and Roxanne Myers as Chief and the Deputy Chief Election Officers, as well as appointing Mr. Prasad, have contributed to the delay in making arrangements for local government elections. GCOM Chairman retired Justice Claudette Singh had told the government that the absence of a Chief Election Officer would have made it impossible to hold those local polls this year. Trinidad and Tobago says it is ready to assist Guyana in building its gas-to-shore pipeline. Energy Minister Stuart Young told a news conference that he recently held informal discussions with Guyana's Natural Resources Minister Vikram Barrett about the construction of the more than 200-kilometer-long pipeline from the Liza 1 well to Wales, West Bank to Marara.
There has been some find of gas, associated gas, as I understand it, and I was speaking to the minister from Guyana. He was sitting next to me in Houston. What they're looking to do is bring some of that gas to shore, but it's going to be hundreds of kilometers of pipeline for domestic electricity production and small manufacturing. We are available to assist. We have the expertise, the services, the knowledge of how to do this. We've been doing it for decades. We were recognized as one of the leading gas producers in the world. So, of course, that is available.
The gas-to-energy project is expected to cost almost $1 billion. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony is welcoming the manufacture of another tablet to treat COVID-19 infected persons. He says the tablet, Paxlovid, made by Pfizer, is yet to be approved by the United States Food and Drug Administration.
What it also shows in this particular study is that for patients using Paxlovid, they had a lower viral load. And if your viral load is quite low, then it prevents transmission of the disease. So that's a good development as well. So Paxlovid is yet to be approved by the US FDA, but certainly once it becomes approved by the US FDA, other countries would be looking to secure and to get these tablets as part of the arsenal against COVID-19.
Merck has also manufactured tablets, but recent reports are that they are not as effective. Meanwhile, the health minister has ruled out the Guyana government getting involved in the costly and complex manufacture of COVID vaccines. At the same time, he says that the major vaccine makers have struck deals with leading companies in South America, and so sufficient vaccines should be made available to Guyana. The man wanted for Wednesday's murder of East Coast Marara conductor surrendered to police at a Brickdam police station in the company of his lawyer hours later. The Guyana Police Force says 27-year-old Paul Jr. Lynch of 127 Bachelor's Adventure East Coast Marara surrendered shortly after the wanted bulletin was issued. Dead is Marvin Nurse of Haslington East Coast Marara. Later Wednesday afternoon, police issued a wanted bulletin for the prime suspect, Mr. Lynch. He is 27 years old and his last known address is 127 Bachelor's Adventure East Coast Marara. Mr. Lynch allegedly stabbed to death Nurse in the Route 44 minibus park, Commerce Street, Georgetown. Police say that they were pelting each other with broken bottles and bricks. Eventually, their disagreement escalated, and Mr. Lynch allegedly stabbed the nurse with a knife to his left side chest. The victim ran a short distance before falling to the ground, while the suspect escaped in a minibus. Police say that the nurse was picked up and taken to the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation, where he is pronounced dead while undergoing his surgery. Turning to news now from the Caribbean, 2 business chambers in Trinidad and Tobago are recommending the creation of more COVID-19 safe zones. We get the details from TT News Online.
The business community continues to be concerned about the impact of COVID-19. This from AmChan TNT, the Energy Chamber, and the TNT Chamber of Industry and Commerce. The groups have put forward additional recommendations to government to aid in curbing the spread of the virus. In a joint statement, the groups say unfortunately the virus continues to spread and are therefore calling for other measures to be taken. Among those, the joint chambers are recommending that government put in place legal clarity to allow businesses to make their business places safe zones. It suggested that in both the public and private sectors who do not have a medical reason not to be must be vaccinated. There was also an additional recommendation to make all public buildings safe zones. The joint chambers say Trinidad and Tobago is in a crisis with regard to the continued rapid spread of the COVID-19 pandemic and is hopeful government acts on the recommendations soon.
That report by TT News Online. Antigua and Barbuda's national revenue is rebounding. The country's economy suffered a devastating blow because COVID-19 had caused a drastic reduction in tourists by air and sea. At one stage, the Antigua and Barbuda government had delayed the payment of salaries and pensions because there had been very little money in the treasury. But as we hear in this report from the Antigua Broadcasting Service, revenue from the Antigua and Barbuda sales tax, ABST, is also showing an impressive increase.
Acting Commissioner of the Inland Revenue Department, Jermaine Jarvis, says the hotel sector accounts for most of the revenue loss that was seen in 2020.
And when you close down the hotels, you not only lose the hotel accommodation revenue, but also the hotels consume to provide food and other amenities for their guests.
He explains one of the clear indicators of aggregate demand and how this impacts on tax collections.
When we look at our measure of consumption, which is the ABST, we are only just about 2 million short of our collections in 2019.
Jarvis says there is evidence of a rebound this year.
Revenue collections compared to the year 2019, which we'll use as a base year, up until November of 2021, we're actually seeing a 2% increase in collections at the Inland Revenue Department.
The acting commissioner says the real estate sector is driving the rebound.
You have the stamp duty that is performing well, and you also have the property tax that's performing incredibly as well. We are only maybe about 200,000 short of our collection baseline of 2019.
Jarvis says an increase in revenues in all areas is projected for 2022, anticipating it to be a very good year for the IRD. Sherilyn Beezer reporting for ABS News.
Scores of passengers aboard a Caribbean Airlines flight from Miami to Piarco, Trinidad on Monday were left stranded for 30 hours in Puerto Rico. That's after an emergency landing there due to the death of a passenger. The flight had 146 passengers on board. CAL's flight BW483 was en route to the Piarco International Airport when about halfway through its journey around 6 p.m. on Monday, it landed in Puerto Rico after flight stewards alerted the captain of the medical emergency in which the passenger died. Guardian Media was told that it was not until 8:15 p.m. that passengers and the crew members were allowed to disembark the plane, and more than 10 hours before they got an update. CAL did not disclose what happened to the aircraft to prevent the passengers from traveling on to Trinidad, but said in a statement yesterday morning that another aircraft was sent to relieve the passengers by midnight Monday. However, that aircraft was also unable to leave due to circumstances outside of the airline's control. With every hour that passed, tensions rose among passengers who flooded the counter for answers on when they'll be back in the air and on their way to their destination. And now, for the latest bulletin of world news, we go to the BBC momentarily. Stay tuned to News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM.
BBC News. Hello, this is Jerry Smith. Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz has said EU leaders meeting at a summit in Brussels will do everything to ensure the inviolability of Europe's borders, amid concern over a build-up of Russian troops near Ukraine and the situation in Belarus. The Lithuanian President, Gitanas Nausėda, said NATO may have to rethink its defence plans concerning Russia and Belarus.
Another very important factor in this complicated environment is full integration of Belarus into the military system of Russia. It allows Russia to use the territory of Belarus as possible platform to attack neighboring countries, and it limits our time to react to these possible events. So I think that NATO has to amend the plans, defense strategies, taking into account what is happening there.
Russia says it will retaliate over the expulsion of 2 Russian diplomats by Germany, saying it was deeply disappointed. The German government acted after a Berlin court found that Moscow had ordered the murder of a former Chechen rebel commander in the German capital. The Turkish lira has hit a new low against the dollar, ahead of an announcement on interest rates from the central bank. Over the past 3 months, it's cut rates because President Recep Tayyip Erdogan believes this will dampen rising prices. But the policy has led to a currency crisis. Here's Victoria Craig.
Typically, central banks raise interest rates to put a lid on rising prices. But the Turkish central bank, under pressure from the nation's president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has been taking the opposite course of action. In the past 3 months, the bank has cut rates because Mr. Erdogan believes them to be the mother and father of all evil. He holds the view, contrary to economic theory, that low rates will boost growth, create new jobs, and cool rampant price increases. The central bank then is expected to slash rates again at Thursday's meeting by 1 percentage point.
Thousands of people have taken shelter from Super Typhoon Rai, which is battering the southern Philippines. The storm made landfall in Siargao, a popular tourist island. Howard Johnson reports.
Power and communication lines are currently down on parts of Siargao Island, a tropical idyll popular with backpackers and surfers. Philippine state meteorologists have forecast the storm to pack sustained winds of around 175 kilometers per hour, while inundating the region with heavy rain. Videos posted on social media show the Philippine Coast Guard helping to evacuate families from flooded coastal and riverside communities. The International Federation of the Red Cross has described Rai as a monster storm and said that climate change is making typhoons more ferocious and unpredictable.
News from the BBC. 5 children have died in Australia after an inflatable bouncy castle was swept into the air by a gust of wind. 4 others are still in hospital after the accident that happened at a primary school fun day in Devonport, Tasmania. Police said the children fell from a height of about 10 metres. France is to tighten restrictions on travellers arriving from Britain to try to slow the spread of the Omicron variant of coronavirus. A government spokesman said only French citizens or British people living in France will be allowed to enter the country. Our correspondent in Paris, Hugh Schofield, has the details.
Speaking on television this morning, the government spokesman Gabriel Attal said that the new measures will be officially announced later, but their substance is now clear. From Saturday, people coming from the UK will be required to have a negative COVID test of less than 24 hours. Once in France, they'll have to self-isolate for a week, but that period of quarantine can be ended after 48 hours if they have a second negative test once in France. Compelling reasons will be needed for entry, which includes visiting family, but not tourism or work. The new measures apply to everyone, regardless of whether or not they've been vaccinated.
The advocacy group Reporters Without Borders says the numbers of journalists behind bars has reached a new high this year. RSF says almost 500 are currently imprisoned, an increase of 20% since last year. The American singer and songwriter Bruce Springsteen has sold his master recordings and music publishing rights to Sony Music in a deal estimated at $500 million. The music magazine Billboard said Sony would have ownership of the rock legend's entire catalogue, including classic albums such as Born in the USA. It's one of the biggest deals ever struck for a single artist's body of work. BBC News.
That's the news to the moment.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now for a recap of the highlights. The opposition may go to court for government spending from the contingency fund. Chief Election Officer Vishnu Prasad says local government elections can be held next year. The man wanted in connection with the stabbing death of an East Coast Demerara bus conductor has surrendered. Regionally, more than 100 passengers aboard a Caribbean Airlines flight had been delayed for 30 hours after a passenger died. The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Laboratories.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.
News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM, bringing you the best of broadcasting.
Giftland Mall, they're giving away vouchers from December 30 to Christmas Eve. You can say there's no such thing as Santa, but as for we on 103, we believe.
From December 13 to 24, listen to News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM.
Answer a simple question and you can win yourself a voucher. Compliments of Giftland Mall.
Season's greetings to supporters of Giftland
and 103.1 FM.